Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. May I please ask that we settle down? Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, apologies for the delayed start. Thank you very much for honoring our invite as we come to release the crime statistics for the first quarter of the 2026-2027 financial year. These are crimes that occurred and were reported between April and June 2026. My name is Kamagelo Mokgotsi, spokesperson for the Minister of Police, and I will be the facilitator for this session. Without wasting time, I do know that we are delayed. I will call upon the Minister of Police, Mr. Firas Kachalia, to come and address us. Minister?
Good morning, everyone. Acting National Commissioner, General Dimpane, Deputy National Commissioners, Acting Head of the DPCI, Lieutenant General Nkosi, the Acting Director General of the Civilian Police Secretariat, Mr. Ramaru, Deputy National Commissioners present, Provincial Commissioners in attendance, and those connected virtually, Divisional Commissioners, representatives of IPID and CIRA, representatives of organized labor, Mr. Masilela of the CPF board, National Board, Ms. Yandiswa Mpesheni, Statistics South Africa, Mr. Foucher Burgers, Business Against Crime, Major General Tulare Sekukune, the SAPS Crime Registrar, who's the most important person here today, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good day to all of you. Today we present the crime statistics for the first quarter of 2026-2027 financial year. As we do every quarter, these figures provide an important picture of the safety and security environment in our country, and they help us plan, understand where our interventions are working, where they require strengthening, and where we must focus our efforts in the months ahead. Crime statistics are just, in one sense, numbers on a page. Behind the numbers is a grieving family, a traumatized community, a life that has been lost. While statistics help us measure performance, our responsibility is to protect the people of South Africa and to give the assurance to our people that their safety and security is our priority and our fundamental commitment. The South African Police Service has recorded noteworthy decreases in several parts of the country and with respect to some of the most serious contact crimes. Murder has declined, confirming a trend that has been evident over a period of time now, marking yet another consecutive quarter in which this form of crime has shown a downward trajectory, notwithstanding the fact that we are continuing to see many killings in areas affected by gang violence. We have also seen a significant reductions in crimes such as car hijacking, residential robberies, and business robberies, including cash-in-transit heists. This too confirms a trend that has been evident over a long period of time. Many of you might not remember a period not so long ago when the country faced annual increases in what we call trio crimes: car hijacking, residential robberies, and business robberies, as well as cash-in-transit heists. So here we have some evidence of results that are achieved through better policing. Major General Sekukune will provide figures, specific figures in his presentation. Some kinds of crime are committed by organized, heavily armed criminal groups that operate with some planning, organization, financing, and a level of sophistication. Gang violence is one example. The violence related to illegal mining, construction mafias, cartels disturbing the delivery of water, extortion-related crime. These are some of the patterns of crime that we're beginning to see take root in our society, and we're trying to find solutions. Other kinds of crime are interpersonal crimes, perpetrated within communities and families where the victims are known to perpetrators. Dealing with this kind of crime is in its own way a more complex challenge because of the deep social and social fabric roots that account for this pattern of criminality in South Africa. Yet we have seen sustained declining trends across some of these categories that suggests that police action, targeted operations, high visibility operations like Operation Chanela, together with the efforts of other government departments, departments across the spheres of government, as well as our efforts to strengthen community policing by working with CPFs, by trying to strengthen the patroller program across the country, which I believe should now develop into a national program that is implemented in the provinces. Restoring a sense of purpose and agency in our communities in the fight against crime is important in itself, but I think the evidence is also clear that it has a meaningful impact on improved in the fight against crime. However, while these statistics demonstrate reductions in certain categories, they do not change the reality for too many of our people that we live in a high crime society accompanied by high levels of violence. So we should always bear in mind as we present these statistics that the experience of our people reflects these high levels, continued high levels of violent crime, and that we should always be orientated by the view that every victim deserves justice. But we live in a society in which justice is always incomplete. Some forms of crime have in fact increased during this reporting period, particularly those affecting women, children, and other vulnerable members of our society. Gender-based violence and femicide continues to demand urgent attention from every sector of society. The month of August is Women's Month. The protection of women and children and other vulnerable persons should remain, does remain, at the center of our national agenda. After the President's characterization of gender-based violence as a national priority, I asked Deputy Minister Dr. Bushelo to lead on behalf of the department on this matter, so it has a specific focus. The statistics also continue to confirm another important trend, that crime is often highly concentrated in particular areas. That means that a relatively small number of policing precincts account for a disproportionate experience of violent crime. This reinforces our commitment to deploying our resources where they are needed most and ensuring that operational decisions are driven by this analysis of the crime patterns, by intelligence, by evidence, and so forth. These stats therefore tell us two important things at the same time: that progress is possible, but that the statistics matter because we incorporate the statistical evidence into decision making, and that our work must continue with renewed vigor. We recently convened the MINMEC. That's a structure that brings together all the provincial governments. Attended in some cases by premiers, but the MECs of community safety, the SAPS leadership, key policy stakeholders, the Community Police Forum leadership, to deliberate on the challenges confronting policing in South Africa. Our discussions were frank, constructive, and focused on practical solutions. I can say that in my experience, this was one of the most effective MINMECs that I have certainly participated in, because we had a clear agenda, we had a clear process of decision making and very specific outcomes. And I'm hopeful and confident that this is going to make a contribution in the future. One of the decisions we made was to identify 140 priority stations. That means that each province has an allocation of those priority stations, and the expectation then is that the provincial governments will focus on the priority stations in their areas, that we will work with the station commissioners in each of those precincts to assist them to get better results. Among the key resolutions adopted was the need to strengthen coordination between the spheres of government, including local government, improve detective services, accelerate the fight against organized crime, extortion, illegal mining, and gang-related violence, and ensure that resources are directed towards identified crime hotspots. The MINMEC also reaffirmed the importance of strengthening partnerships with municipalities metropolitan police departments, community policing structures, and other law enforcement agencies. Every sphere of government has a role to play, and we must all be aligned behind this common objective. I will say that I think this is particularly important also in the areas affected by forms of organized crime like gang-related violence. The idea that we are going to solve this kind of criminality simply with law enforcement interventions or even by deploying the army is entirely mistaken. We need stronger law enforcement, the implementation of an organized crime strategy, better coordination between the law enforcement agency, the South African Police Service, which is the primary law enforcement agency to deal with crime, coordinating with the South African Defence Force through Operation Prosper. That's what we're trying to achieve as a department, but we need to have a conversation in our society about the development challenge as part of the long-term solution to deal with the social and economic roots of gang violence, extortion rackets, even illegal mining is driven by socioeconomic factors. The MINMAC resolved to prioritize interventions in 140 high-crime police stations, precincts across the country, and we select the 140 stations with reference to these statistics, the crime patterns in the country. These stations will receive, amongst others, targeted operational support, enhanced oversight, and improved resource allocation. We will also shortly be announcing General Sentumule and General Mamatete are working on a police station modernization project. We will shortly be announcing 100 police stations, which is basically about digitalizing police services at police level. We have identified those police stations. She assures me that in a couple of weeks that project will be ready for a public announcement. Now, there is one matter that I want to emphasize this morning, and that is the connection between alcohol abuse and violent crime. These stats show unmistakably a pattern that we have all been familiar with for a long period of time. And I'm somewhat frustrated that we haven't fully tackled this problem. Violent crimes occur mainly over the weekends, at night, and they're concentrated around liquor outlets. Many of them unlicensed and operating without any regard for regulation. The police are doing their best to close down establishments that are unlicensed. But there's not very much we can do when too many licenses are next to schools, in communities, next to churches and so forth are issued. We've had one liquor plan after another. Maybe we have to have another attempt at a conversation with the liquor industry. But there is no doubt that if we can tackle this particular link more effectively, this is not about abstinence. Those are decisions that individuals can take. It's about, at the very least, about responsible consumption and about the liquor industry also fully exercising its responsibilities, backed up by effective regulation and law enforcement. This kind of violent crime cannot be solved simply through police action, increasing the number of arrests and so forth. In this respect, I think provincial governments and local authorities have a particularly important role. And it would be helpful for the national conversation to focus on this matter. When we have this conversation every quarter about the crime stats, it would be helpful in the fight against crime if in the reporting that the media also reflects on the issues that need attention, like the relationship between alcohol, the abuse of alcohol consumption, oversupply, and its connection with social fabric crime. You want to relax on the weekend, you watch a football match, you go out to enjoy yourself and you don't come home? What is the impact of that kind of violence on family life, on a sense of community safety and cohesion? So it's really a very important matter that needs attention. I also want, in this context, to emphasize, as we release the stats, what I've called the reset agenda in SAPS. It is now a reset agenda of the ministry and of the department and of the provincial governments. That was the outcome of the MINMEC. So as we watch the Madlanga Commission reveal levels of decay and degeneration in the police service, let us also look at what the police are actually doing in the fight against crime, in the contribution that police officers at all levels, from the leadership down and from the bottom up, are doing to fight crime and to keep the country safe, and the steps that are being taken to address the issues that are emerging from the Madlanga Commission. For instance, to restore probity and integrity to the procurement system within SAPS. So what is the reset agenda about? It's about building a modern, professional, community-centered police service that is intelligence-driven, ethical, responsive, and accountable. Maybe I'm I don't know if I should go so far as to say that, to be so emboldened as to say that perhaps we need to restore, as we're thinking about the police service, what the Constitution requires. This is not a matter I've discussed with the leadership, so they're looking at me with some concern about what I might say. But to go back to the idea of a professional police service, and what does that mean for the way we think about the ranks in the police service. And I'm emboldened to say this because I've been having one-on-one conversations with, and I've been surprised about how receptive this strategic leadership in SAPS, thinking long-term, thinking about the police service, saying to me that they think that this is a question that needs some re-examination. The question is what kind of police service we want to build in the next 30 years. We've achieved something in the last 30 years. We've made many mistakes as well, but we have to ask ourselves in this moment of crisis, what kind of police service we're trying to build in the country. That's what the reset agenda is about. Now, Kamu has prepared a very long speech. She gets upset when I delete. Well, but I'm going to bring this to an end. I made some observations which were not in the speech. So I want to talk about police safety. 2 police officers were brutally murdered in Rega Park. Constable Sibeko, and Constable Plamatsane. They were murdered after I visited Reiger Park. And that's why I was a little bit, upset that day when I visited, because those two police officers were murdered. They were part of the anti-gang unit. They were deployed the anti-gang unit was strengthened in Reiger Park following my visit a few months ago. They were brutally murdered. The slaying included the lives of two young women, Rolene Lessing and Jaden Margaman. And then I have just come back from Knysna, where 3 councillors or candidate councillors were murdered. I met the investigation team. I was accompanied by General Mkwanazi because among the steps we've taken to strengthen our approach to organized crime is to strengthen the leadership. And he was there to give confidence to the investigation team that they will get the support that they need. And on the day that I was there, 3 suspects appeared in court. And then yesterday, after I left Knysna, I got the message that Captain Zamani Mzahir had also been murdered. And I am just indicating to all of you that I just met the investigation team. So I think it's very important for this country also to have a conversation about the risks that police officers take. The two who were murdered in Reiger Park, 27, 28-year-old, young men. So I think the time has come to express also some appreciation for the work that the police are doing. Don't just look at the Madlanga Commission and draw conclusions that you can post on social media, because everybody's a genius on social media. Everybody knows everything on social media, has all the answers. But policing in this country is a very difficult job, high-risk job, and the fact of the matter is that as we are trying to improve safety, deal with violent crime, deal with the gangs, it's the young police officers who are the ones who are paying the price. So we have to have a conversation about police safety. It's a priority in the police service. It's a priority in the cabinet. Just a few weeks ago, we made a presentation to cabinet, and then the president sent us back actually because he wanted more detail, just to emphasize the importance also that the president is also concerned about this matter. And then what this also tells us is that in the run-up to the local government elections, political killings continue. And councillors, in this case, as we go up to the local government elections, also we see that's the risk that the councillors are not safe. I met in Knysna. I also met with the council, the mayor, the deputy mayor, the speaker, and the councillors themselves. And you can imagine that they are extremely concerned, and there's concern around the country about the safety of councillors. I think it's clear that people who want to participate in the democratic process are still vulnerable. So that's why we took a decision, in fact, to expand the jurisdiction of the PKTT to Gauteng and other parts of the country. But the challenge is that almost anyone who's a whistleblower in a government department can be vulnerable. People who are responsible for her murder, not the people who did the shooting, but the people who financed and authorized that murder haven't been brought to justice. So that's unfinished business. So, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, the first quarter crime stats demonstrate that we are making progress. And I do know that because we're seeing what's going on in the Madlanga Commission every day, and because every day our people experience violent crime, it's difficult to believe, but there is progress. And I'm willing to say that again. I said that at the last media conference, that there is progress, that the police are making progress in the fight against crime. And that tells you that we do have a police service made up of 180,000 police officers who come to do their work every day. Otherwise, we would not be able to release statistics like this. There are also significant challenges that remain, and so we cannot rest. We cannot be complacent. The SAPS reset agenda, together with the resolutions adopted at the Police MINMEC, by the way, the issue of alcohol consumption was also addressed at that MINMEC, and there are clear resolutions that emerged from that MINMEC, also provide clear direction for the work ahead. And I'm not just making rhetorical statements. I think that if the national ministry, I see the national ministry as the provincial MECs as part of a national team. They are not just provincial MECs or my subordinates. They are part of my team. We are equals. We have a joint responsibility to fight crime, and I think the country is very. We're in a good position because we have very determined and capable MECs in all the provinces. And I'm looking forward to the outcome of the local government elections, because I think that the mayors and the local authorities are going to also have to play a very important role through bylaw enforcement, for instance, in the fight against crime. By strengthening intelligence, improving investigations, supporting our frontline officers, embracing innovation and building stronger partnerships with communities, we can continue driving crime down in the right direction. The South Africa we seek to build is one where our children can walk safely to school, where businesses can operate without fear and without extortion, where women feel secure in their homes and public spaces. I often hear from women in our society how the fact that they cannot use public spaces with a sense of safety and security, something that they compare, when we compare ourselves with other countries, we compare adversely. We should be able to live in a society where women particularly can walk anywhere at any time, dressed the way they want to dress, have fun, go out on the weekends, go to school, go to university, be safe. We don't live in that kind of reality yet. This vision will not be achieved by government alone. It requires all hands on deck, together with communities, law enforcement agencies, civil society, and every law-abiding South African citizen. We can build a safer nation. We must build a safer nation. We are not there yet there. South Africa is an unfinished project, but we must remain determined, united, and focused on getting there. And if we do, we certainly will. Thank you, Giyabonga. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, the speech has been sent to the various media groups. The beautifully written speech has been sent to the various media groups. It will also be available on the SAPS website. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, without wasting time, I would like to call, in the Minister's words, the star of the show, Major General Tularis Kukuni, who is the Crime Registrar of the SAPS.
While we are busy with the technicalities, let me take this opportunity to thank the Minister of Police, Professor Kachalia, the Acting National Commissioner of the South African Police Service, General Dimpane, the Lieutenant General Musikiri, Lieutenant General Sinchumule, Lieutenant General Zulu, Lieutenant General Mkwanazi, Lieutenant General Nkosi, and Dadera Maru from the Civilian Secretariat of Police. Ladies and gentlemen, good day. I would have requested a round of applause because when the star enters, there's a round of applause. But unfortunately, the subject matter that we are dealing with here is not a matter that we can applaud because it shows the plight that our communities are experiencing. We will be taking you through the first quarter of the crime statistics, covering the period from the 1st of April up to the 30th of June. We just want to get the technicalities out of the way so that we can start with the flighting of the presentation. While we're doing this, I would just like to confirm that the full presentation will be uploaded onto the SAPS website, and the version that we will be covering in this presentation is the shortened version in the interest of time, but the full version will be on the SAPS website.
I've shared it, and it's not showing there.
Can I confirm or for the people that are online whether the presentation is visible online? It's not. Will you catch the bus while it's running and I start presenting, or do we wait for it to be visible online and in the room? Okay. I think technology has this funny habit of applying the Murphy's Law. You test it 10 minutes before the presentation starts, and everything works perfect. And then the moment that you are supposed to get on with the presentation, then the hiccups do happen. Yeah. I'm not sure whether at this stage I will need my spectacles because I've been reading these numbers for too long. It's taking its toll on my eyes. So I'll wear the spectacles to make sure that I read the numbers correctly. Can we go to the next slide? I've already indicated that the presentation will be on the SAPS website, and I think we can get on with the presentation. For the current quarter, as is the norm, we normally start with a table that shows how the South African Police Service have performed or what the crimes that have been reported to the South African Police Service. On the left-hand side of this table is the national figures, and then on the right-hand side is the figures per province. I'm just taking a laser pointer, but I know it won't show there. So what we are observing in this current quarter is that we have recorded a reduction in terms of the murders. They have gone down by 343 counts. Sexual offences have gone down by 98 counts. Assault GBH have gone up by 557 counts. Attempted murder by 557 counts. Assault GBH by 930 counts. Common assault by 830 counts. Common robbery by 574 counts. Robbery with aggravating circumstances, 4,636 counts decrease, and the sum total of the contact crimes have gone down by 3,334. Now, on the right-hand side, we have the provincial comparison. Starting again with the murders, we see that only 2 provinces have recorded increases in terms of the murder. That is the province of the Mpumalanga and Northwest. All the other 7 provinces have recorded decreases. Furthermore, 2 provinces, that is the Northwest and the Western Cape, have recorded decreases in terms of the attempted murders. Then also we have the Northwest, Northern Cape and Western Cape that have recorded decreases in terms of the common assault, even though the attempted murder, assault GBH, and common assault have increased at the national level. What we have observed, especially on those 3 crimes that have recorded increases, is that almost 67% of assault GBH were as a result of arguments, revenge, or retaliation. And when we drill down into the causative factors of those attempted murders, we found that 40% of the attempted murders were also attributable to arguments, revenge, and retaliation. 7,134 counts of assault GBH had an element of domestic violence. That is further in the presentation when we get to the table which talks to domestic violence related issues. We found that most of the assault GBH that we have seen having increased in this current quarter can also be attributable to domestic violence. And 14,392 common assaults also had an element of domestic violence. Then moving on to the subcategories of sexual offenses, starting with the rape, we see that we have recorded increases in 3 provinces, that is Mpumalanga, Northern Cape, and the Western Cape have recorded increases, whereas the provinces that have recorded decreases were Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, and Northwest. And the Eastern Cape and the Free State recorded the same numbers as in the previous comparable period. Then moving on to the subcategories of robbery with aggravating circumstances, the trio crimes, as the Minister has alluded to, we have recorded decreases at the national level, with the carjacking having reduced by 846 counts, robbery at residential premises reducing by 944 counts, then robbery at non-residential premises reducing by 366 counts. For the provinces, we have recorded decreases across all the 9 provinces when it comes to carjacking and also for robbery at residential premises. Then for robbery at non-residential premises, we have recorded only 1 province that has recorded an increase in terms of robbery at non-residential premises, which was the province of the Western Cape. Then moving on to the robberies of cash in transit, we have reduced 2 counts, that is from the previous 35 counts, currently we have recorded 33 counts. We did not have any bank robberies for the current quarter, and the truck hijackings, we have recorded a reduction of 87 counts. Then on the next slide, we see that We have recorded increases in terms of the malicious damage to property. However, for arson, we have recorded a reduction of 104. Malicious damage to property has increased by 626 counts, and only 2 provinces have achieved reduction when it comes to malicious damage to property. And the sum total of the contact-related crimes increased by 522. Then for the property-related crimes, starting with burglary at non-residential, 61, burglary at residential premises, a reduction of 2,325, theft of motor vehicle and motorcycle, a reduction of 528, theft out of or from motor vehicle, an increase of 21 counts, and stock theft, a reduction of 377, meaning that in terms of the 5 crime types that make up the broad category of property-related crimes, we out of or from motor vehicle, and the 4 other. Then for other serious crimes, we have recorded a decrease in terms of all theft not mentioned elsewhere. We, however, have recorded an increase in terms of commercial crime and another decrease in terms of shoplifting, and the sum total of the other serious crimes reduced by 604 counts. And the sum total for the 17 community reported crimes decreased by 6,787. Then moving on to the crime detected as a result of police action, where these are proxy for proactive policing initiative. The desired trajectory of change is an increase, and when we are recording an increase, it is what we desire, and therefore it is color-coded green. Then starting with illegal possession of firearm and ammunition, we have recovered less than what we have recovered. Then for drug-related crimes, we have increased the detection of those by 5,950. Similarly, for driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, we have helped more people to remove more people who had or drugs. That is 1,300 more counts. We, however, did not achieve in terms of sexual offenses detected as a result of police action. We are 25 counts less compared to the previous comparable period. And for the sum total of crime detected as a result of police action, we have increased those by 6,967 counts. Then moving on to the next slide, we look at the similar categories of crime, where we start with the contact crimes. These are the crimes against the person. The numbers, I believe that you can read those for yourself, but then what we would like to also highlight is the issue that when you take the collective of Eastern Cape, Gauteng province, and the Western Cape, these 4 provinces collectively contribute 73% to the national total in terms of your contact crimes. Then the provinces that have recorded decreases when it comes to the contact crime is your Eastern Cape, Gauteng, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Northwest, and the Western Cape. And the sum total of the reductions for contact crimes is 3,334. Then on the next slide, we look into the contact crime stations, the top 30 contact crime stations. For the contact crime 30 stations, what we are observing here is that only 4 provinces feature in the top 30 contact crime stations. These are 11 stations from the province of Gauteng, and we have 10 stations that are in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and then we have 8 provinces that are in the province of the Western Cape. The only province that is contributing 1 station to the top 30 contact crime stations is the province of Limpopo with Thohoyandou. Thohoyandou is the only station that is outside of the big three province that is featuring in terms of your top 30 contact stations, and it is number 18 at the national total and number 1 when you only consider the province of Limpopo. Then on the next slide, we look at the murders. Again, the big 4 provinces, that is your Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, and the Western Cape, in terms of the murders, they contribute 84% of the total murders that have been reported in the country. The respective contributions, even though all these provinces have recorded decreases, Gauteng decreased by 10.7% in terms of the murder, Western Cape reduced by 6.7%, Eastern Cape reduced by 4.5%, and KwaZulu-Natal reduced by 1.7%. Then we also have Free State, which have recorded a decrease of 16.1 counts. Then moving on to the next slide, where we look at the provincial distribution in terms of the murders. I think there's the slide is there. For the purposes of this slide, we normally look at the population of the respective provinces rather than just providing raw numbers, because what is evident from this slide is that there is a proportionality between the total population of a particular province vis-a-vis the total number of murders that normally happen within that province. So we are trying to standardize the comparison so that we not only look at the numbers, but we also take into consideration the total population per province for the respective provinces. So what we have observed using the mid-year population estimates from the 2021 series as obtained from Stats SA, we see that the province with the highest per capita murder is the province of the Eastern Cape with 16 per 100,000 murders. The second highest is the province of the Western Cape with 14 per 100,000. The third highest province is the province of KwaZulu-Natal with 10 per 100,000. Then Gauteng is at 7 per 100,000. Then Mpumalanga, Northwest, and the Free State, they are sitting there around 5 per 100,000. The Northern Cape is sitting at 4 per 100,000, and Limpopo is the province with the least per capita murder of 3 per 100,000. Then we move on to the causative factors in terms of the murders. We drew a sample of 5,170 counts and tried to check what were the causative factors that were indicated in the commission of these murders. What we have observed is that most of the murders were attributable to arguments, misunderstanding, and provocation, which was indicated in 880 of the incidents that we perused. And the province which had the highest number of murders attributable to arguments was the Western Cape with 210, the Eastern Cape with 195, and Gauteng province at number 3 with 164. Then moving further at, I think it's row number 5, where we look at the gang-related murders. From the same sample, we observe that 251 of the murders were attributable to gang-related incidents, and the bulk of these were in the province of the Western Cape, with 217 of the murders attributable to gang-related. Then the second highest was the province of Gauteng with 29, and the Eastern Cape with 2. Then we also had, from the fourth line from the bottom, we had murders of law enforcement and security guards, which exclude police officers. We see that there were 25 of these law enforcement and security guards that were killed in the line of duty. And if you bring the 6 police officers that were also killed in the line of duty. This brings the total number of security personnel, including police officers that were killed on duty, to 31 counts. However, if you were to take the total number of police officers that were killed and add it to this, the sum total of these numbers add up to 42 law enforcement or security personnel that were killed in the current quarter. I guess by all standards, this is a large number for people that are involved in security cluster and police-related issues that can be killed in a space of plus minus 90 days. The number is highly unacceptable. Then we also have one causative factor that in the current quarter exclusively happened in the province of Gauteng. That is illicit mining. All the 18 murders that had been recorded in the current quarter for illicit mining, or those that were classified as illicit mining, they all happened in the province of Gauteng. Then we also had 16 murders that were rape-related. Then moving on to the places of occurrence of the murders, again from the same sample of 5,170 counts of the murders, we see that 2,871 of the murders happened at public places. The second highest contributing place for the occurrence of the murders was at the residence of the perpetrator, which was 1,614. This is almost 31% of the murders that, from the sample that we have drawn, that indicate that people are not safe in their residences, including residences known to the victim. And it highlights an element of social interaction where the people initially interact maybe through consuming alcohol and other mind-altering substances that they end up fighting, and these fights in some instances results in murder. We also have 213 of the murders that have taken place at places where it is known that alcohol is being sold. That will include your shebeens, tavern, pubs, bottle store, and nightclubs. Then we also have 75 of the murders that have taken place at the tuck shop. The majority of those were in the province of the Western Cape with 30, followed by KwaZulu-Natal at 19 and Gauteng province at 15. I think the rest of the places of occurrence can be read from the slide. Then this slide simply shows that we are living in a society whereby it is, I don't know whether to say, I think it's a heartless society whereby in one incident we can have plus minus 13 people being killed in one incident, and the very same incident resulting in 14 attempted murders. So in this particular incident that happened was in Cleveland, where in total 27 people were victims. 13 of those were killed and 14 was attempted murders. We also have a case in Melmoth, which was robbery related. This particular one in Melmoth resulted in 7 victims that were killed and a person that was raped. This was 7 family members, 4 women and 3 men were robbed and murdered after being kidnapped from their home. 1 woman was raped during the incident. However, 3 suspects have been arrested, and one of them is the former employee of this family that has been killed. Then moving on to the weapon that had been used in the previous slide, we showed that there is not a one-to-one relationship between a dead body and a firearm. as many people can be killed in one incident, either with one firearm or many firearms. So when we read this table and we say that from the sample size of 5,170 counts, 2,513 people were killed with a firearm, it does not mean that 2,513 firearms were used. In some instances, it's multiple murders with a single firearm, double murders, etc. However, the weapon of choice, as we see in this table, is a firearm which has been used in 2,513 counts, and the majority of those firearm-related deaths happened in the province of the Western Cape, which is 663. The second was Gauteng with 652, KwaZulu-Natal at number 3 with 580, and the Eastern Cape at number 4 with 369. Then the second weapon of choice is a knife, followed by sharp instrument, blunt instrument, and body parts. Body parts literally means that people were either kicked, punched, and etc. So it does not mean that a certain body part. It literally means that the murder was committed either with a fist or kicking and all those things. Then we have already touched on the murders of police officials. We have indicated that in the current quarter, there were 16 police officials that were killed, and of these police officials that were killed, 11 were off duty and 6 were on duty. And those that were on duty, I think 2 were attending to a complaint, 2 were following up on information, and the other 2 were doing proactive policing duties. And then the province that has recorded the highest number of police murders in the current quarter is the province of the Eastern Cape, which have recorded 7 murders of police officers. Then on the next slide, we look at the rural attacks on rural communities. This is the issue that normally will make headlines in other countries, where it will then be said that South Africa is pressurizing or prejudicing a certain racial group, especially the farming community. However, as the statistics indicate here, there was only one incident which was classified as an attack on rural community, and the person who was killed in that particular incident was a resident on the farm. Then moving on to the rape statistics, the provinces that have recorded increases in terms of the rape is the province of Mpumalanga, Northern Cape, and the Western Cape. The other 4 provinces, which is Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and Limpopo and Northwest, have recorded decreases, whereas Eastern Cape and Free State recorded the same number as in the previous comparable period. Then this, similar to the murders, we look at the per capita, and we see that the province of the Eastern Cape is the one with the highest per capita rape of 22 per 100,000, followed by the Northern Cape with 21 per 100,000, and the Free State with 20 per 100,000. Again, we use the mid-year population estimates as obtained from Stats SA to standardize the comparison across the provinces. Then moving on to the places of occurrence of the rape, what we have observed is that from a sample of 6,596, 4,121 of the rapes happened at the residence of the perpetrator, including residents known by the victim, perpetrator, or family members. And in terms of percentages, this is 62% of the rapes that from the sample that we have drawn are taking place at the residences of the perpetrator, again showing an element of acquaintances or social element in the rapes that we are experiencing. Then we also have 1,462 of the rapes having taken place at the public place, and that is 22%. 99 of the rapes have taken place at abandoned buildings, and we also have 84 of the rapes that have taken place at educational institutions. Then the use and abuse of alcohol in the commission of the crimes. The blue color indicates, can we go to the slide on next? Contact crime, liquor, and drug related. Yeah, the blue color indicates instances where alcohol was used, and the orange color indicates instances where drugs were used. We have 250 murders whereby alcohol was used, 620 attempted murders where alcohol was used, and 1,433 incidents where alcohol was used. Assault GBH 5,136. And the bottom table indicates confirmed murders and attempted murders that have taken place at the place where alcohol is being sold. We have 213 of the murders that have taken place at shebeen's, liquor outlets, etc. 429 of the attempted murders have taken place at shebeen's, and 69 of the rapes have taken place at such facilities. And we also have 3,593 of assault GBH happening at the places where alcohol is being sold. We also touched on murder and rape at the educational premises. We indicated that there were 6 murders that had taken place at the educational premises, and 84 of the rapes having taken place at the educational premises. What we have observed is that 854 of the rapes have taken place at school, 8 have taken place at special school, and 13 of the rapes took place at the tertiary institution. The 6 murders, 4 were at the school, 1 at the daycare center, and 1 at the special school. Then this gives a breakdown in terms of the provinces where these rapes at educational premises have taken place. Then we move on to selected domestic violence incidents. We indicated that one of the contributory factors to the increases that we have observed in terms of common assault and assault GBH was as a result of domestic violence. In this instance, we looked specifically at instances where it was indicated that there's a relationship between the perpetrator and the victim, either as ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, current boyfriend, current girlfriend, and we look at such particular relationship to determine how much of a contributing factor it is to the total crime that we are seeing. For the current quarter, we have seen that 193 of the murders can be attributable to have taken place between people who have some kind of a domestic relationship. However, going to the common assault, we have 14,392 incidents that have taken place between people that are known to each other or have a domestic relationship, and 7,134 of the assault GBH have taken place between such people. And we have also seen that the incident of malicious damage to property in the big table has also increased. Again, it can also be attributable to the people that have some kind of a domestic relationship, because we see that 5,838 of malicious damage to properties that had been reported in the country, there was a domestic relationship between the victim and the perpetrator. Then next slide, we look at the carjacking. Again, as when we started with the presentation, we indicated that we have recorded the decreases across the trio crimes, and leading with carjacking, which has decreased across all the 9 provinces and across all the 3 months that make up the quarter. we have managed to reduce carjacking by 846 counts. Then on the next slide, we simply indicate that the method by which the armored vehicle or the robbery of cash in transit happened. In 17 of these incidents, the armored vehicle was on the road. 7 of these, when the armored vehicle was on the road, happened in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, 3 in the Eastern Cape, 2 in Gauteng and Free State, and 1 each in Northwest, Western Cape, and in Mpumalanga. 14 of these cash in transit robberies were cross pavements, and 7 of these happened in the province of Gauteng, with 1 at an ATM site and 2 in Mpumalanga. Then the pie chart at the bottom, it indicates the method that had been used to access the money. We see that in 11 incidents, the armored vehicle was bombed after being shot at. In 5 incidents, after it was collided with, it was then subsequently bombed to access the cash. Then on the next slide, we look at the truck hijackings. The provinces that have recorded increases in terms of truck hijacking was the province of the Northern Cape, Western Cape, and the Free State. All the other 6 provinces recorded decreases. Then kidnappings. We have recorded decreases in 3 of the 9 provinces. These are Gauteng, Limpopo, and the Northern Cape that have recorded decreases, and the other 6 provinces have recorded increases. What is worth noting is that for these kidnappings, 2 provinces, that is the province of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, they contribute 70% of all these kidnappings that have taken place in the country. Then we looked at extortion from a sample size of 519 counts. We looked at the types of extortion that were reported in the country. We found that 291 of the 519 were extortion of a financial kind, whereby in some instances there was ransom demanded. This was in 73 of the extortion-related issues. And then we also have instances, that is 112, that were protection rackets, which included construction mafias, businesses, and taxis. Blackmail, we have 106, and we also have 6 counts of extortion that were classified as cyber extortion, and other non-related extortions will also be observed from the table. Then we also looked at the type of businesses that were extorted. From the same sample size, we found that most of the businesses were spaza shops. 31 of these happened at spaza shops. At residential or real estate properties, there were 13 counts. 13 of these extortion-related happened were tax-related, and we also had 9 that were construction, including infrastructure maintenance and services. We also had some that were obviously not classified. Then we have 4 of these extortion that were barber shop or saloon parlor related, and we also have, I think it was 1 which included a tavern. Then the rest can be read from the table. Then we also have what we call core diversions. The core diversions are instances that require the presence of police. That will be either policing PSL, games. In some instances, they would include the matches, etc. These obviously deplete the resources that could have been used by the police to fight crime somewhere, but they are now diverted to go and police incidents that can be either peaceful or in some instances can be classified as unrest. we had 549 instances that required the presence of police that were classified as unrest, and we also had 1,365 incidents which were termed to be peaceful that required the presence of police. And this is basically a summary in terms of the provinces. Can we go to the next slide? A summary in terms of the provinces when one looks at the 17 community reported crimes. But then there is also an issue that I feel maybe we should also talk to in this instance. We have written a notice onto the SAPS website where we indicated that until such time that we are confident with the numbers of crimes against women and children, we will continue working on making sure that this data set is adequate and represents the true picture in the country. Because there is a problem, especially on the variables of sex and age. So in some instances, you might find that some of the cases are misclassified. Like for instance, a mother reporting a rape case on behalf of a minor child, the details of the mother are then captured instead of those of the child. So again, for this quarter, we have just undertaken a manual exercise to try and make sure that these numbers reflect a correct and a true picture. And what we have observed in this round is that for the murders of children, they were overestimated by 59 counts. And for the attempted murders of children, they were overestimated by 36 counts. However, the rapes were underestimated by 93 counts. So we plead again that allow us space so that we can be in a position to make sure that this task is not undertaken through a manual exercise, but it can be automated. And when the numbers that are being spewed by the system are true reflection of the situation, we will then put back the crimes against women and children back into the bigger picture of the crime statistics. And for the fact that I say these are crimes against women and children, it is immaterial of who the perpetrator was. Because when you say crimes against women and children, some people automatically think that the perpetrator was a male. But we have seen instances where the crimes against women and children were actually committed by other females. Then moving on to the women's statistics, again, the murders of women were overestimated by 323 counts. The attempted murders of women were overestimated by 364 counts. That will be instances whereby you find that the mother is captured instead of the child, or the gender is not adequately captured. However, again, similar to the crimes against children, the rape of women was underestimated by 82 counts. So these are the initiatives that we are taking to ensure that whenever we come and brief the members of the media and the population at large, we want to make sure that the numbers that we are talking about have been quality assured and are in line with the South African Statistical Quality Assessment Framework, and in due course, they will then be shared with Stats SA for verification and classification purposes as official statistics. Until such exercise has been done, we plead with those that are not statistically inclined to let the statisticians do their work in the best way that they know how. I thank you.
Thank you very much to Major General Solaris Kukuni, who is the SAPS Crime Registrar. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I would like to call upon the Acting National Commissioner to just come and provide an overview of the operations and successes captured in this quarter.
Thank you, Program Director. Greetings to the Acting Minister of Police, Professor Firoz Kachalia, the Deputy National Commissioners who are present here today, the Acting Head of the DPCI, Lieutenant General Nkosi, the Provincial Commissioners present as well as those that are connected online, the Divisional Commissioners present, the Deputy Director General from Statistics South Africa, Ms. Yandisa Mpesheni and your team, the Deputy Director General acting from Civilian Secretariat, Ntate Ramaru, representatives from Organized Labor, the Executive Program Manager from BAXA, Mr. Foshia Begas, the CPF Board Representative, Mr. Masilela, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Good day. Today we release a set of crime statistics that must be understood not merely as numbers on a page, but as a measure of the lived reality of our communities, and equally as a reflection of the intensity, direction, and effectiveness of policing operations across the country. Behind every statistic is a victim, a family, a community, and in many instances, a police officer who has worked under difficult and demanding circumstances to prevent crime, to apprehend perpetrators, as well as to restore safety. The fight against crime continues with determination, with greater operational intensity, and with an unwavering commitment to reclaim the safety of our communities. Minister, as well as members of the media, as part of the Women's Month program, yesterday we addressed the SAPS Women's Day event as part and parcel of Public Service Women's Management Week, bringing together women across the rank structure to strengthen our collective commitment to women's transformation and leadership. This morning, we translated that commitment into action through an operation that is carried out by women in Roslyn. This operation, Minister, is called Operation Basadi. Women in their numbers are currently in Pretoria North, forming part of the nationwide operations that we started on the 1st of August. Across 1,943 operations conducted by women in SAPS provinces as well as divisions, 4,096 arrests have been secured, including 622 for contact crimes as well as over 1,000 through intensified police action, while over 2,000 firearms as well as ammunition items were confiscated and 213 warrants executed. Operation Basadi demonstrates, Minister, that women in policing are not only champions of transformation, but they are also active agents of safer communities, working alongside law enforcement partners through roadblocks, stops and search operations, community engagement, and focused interventions against GBVF, and crimes targeting women, children, persons with disability, and older persons, while strengthening attention to wanted sexual offenders, community services centers, and relevant dockets. Coming back to today's agenda, members of the media, the statistics before us today shows areas of progress, but they also expose areas where the criminal threat remains stubborn and unacceptable. Murder has decreased by 5.9%. This represents 343 fewer murders compared to the same period last year. However, 5,427 murders in 90 days remains too high. Every death represents a life lost and a family devastated. We must also be candid that the 5.9% decrease is lower than the 9.5% reduction recorded in the preceding quarter. This means that while we are making inroads, the pace of progress is not yet where it must be. We will therefore be intensifying our efforts to direct resources, personnel and operational deployments towards those areas and crime categories where the current picture demands a more decisive response. The broader picture shows that contact crimes decreased by 2.3%, sexual offences decreased marginally by 0.8%, while robbery with aggravating circumstances declined by 14.7%. More significantly, the trio crimes declined by 16.4%, carjacking by 18.2%, robbery at residential premises by 17.6%, robbery at non-residential premises by 11.8%, and truck hijacking by 21%. These are important movements, and they provide evidence that sustained, targeted, and intelligence operations can shift this crime picture. These outcomes cannot be separated from the operational work undertaken by SAPS members on a daily basis. During the first quarter, Minister Operations Shanela continued to drive high-density, high-visibility policing across the country. SAPS conducted more than 440,000 high-visibility patrols, more than 520,000 stop-and-search operations, and over 3,000 roadblocks. These interventions are not simply activities that generate statistics. They are deliberate operational measures designed to prevent crime, disrupt criminal activity, increase police visibility, and create a sense of consequences for those who threaten the safety of our communities. The scale of enforcement is further demonstrated by the 171,986 suspects arrested during the quarter, including over 28,000 wanted suspects linked to serious crimes such as murder, attempted murder, rape, other sexual offenses, and illegal possession of firearms. Members of the media, we arrested 1,618 suspects for murder, 1,581 for attempted murder, over 1,900 for rape, and over 16,000 for assault with intent to inflict grievous bodily harm. We also arrested 863 suspects for contravention of Firearms Control Act, over 1,200 for illegal possession of firearms, and over 5,800 for possession of dangerous weapon. The fight against drugs remains central to our operational strategy because drugs are a significant driver of violence, a significant driver of organized criminality and social disorder. During this quarter, underreporting, 4,594 suspects were arrested for dealing in drugs and over 29,000 for possession of drugs. Members of the media, the recent 600 million drug bust in Musina, Limpopo demonstrates that the South African Police Service's intelligence-driven approach to dismantling organized drug trafficking network is bearing results. A sophisticated crystal meth manufacturing operation was uncovered with 5 suspects who are 2 Mexican nationals, 2 Zimbabwean nationals, and 1 Malawian national, and these suspects were arrested. This breakthrough was followed by another major interception at OR Tambo International Airport on Tuesday, the 25th of August, where custom officials as well as SAPS seized approximately 334 kilograms of suspected cocaine valued at more than 200 million. While no arrests have yet to be made in the OR Tambo matter, investigations are currently underway to identify and apprehend those behind these consignments. These operations demonstrate the sustained operational pressure SAPS is bringing to bear on organized criminal networks and the illicit drug trade. We also closed over 6,500 liquor premises for the quarter. This was for various contraventions, motorists for driving under the influence of alcohol. These interventions are very important because the patterns emerging from our crime analysis increasingly demonstrate the intersection between alcohol, the minister has touched on this, alcohol, drugs, violent behavior, and certain categories of contact crime. Our operational response also focused on removing the tools of criminality. The South African Police Service seized 1,583 illegal firearms, including over 1,300 handguns and 136 rifles, together with 27,000 rounds of ammunition. Approximately 1.2 million in cash suspected to be linked to criminal activities was also seized, while 780 hijacked and stolen vehicles were recovered. A further 373 suspects were arrested for illicit mining. These interventions demonstrate that our approach is increasingly directed at disrupting the ecosystems that enables crime, rather than simply responding to crime after it has occurred. Most importantly, the results we are seeing are substantially driven by intelligence-led policing. We are therefore repurposing our crime intelligence to become the center of proactive policing. We are strengthening its capacity to identify threats, anticipate criminal activity, develop actionable intelligence and direct operational resources where they will have the greatest impact. This includes the filling of critical vacancies within the CI and strengthening the capability required to convert intelligence into decisive operational action. Members of the media, Minister, the recent withdrawal of cases involving crime intelligence leadership and members must be understood within the broader principle of institutional credibility, due process, justice, and the rule of law. The unfolding processes demonstrate that institutions must be allowed to perform their functions without undue interference. This is an important reflection on the maturity of our democratic institutions and reinforces our commitment to lawful, fair, and accountable policing. At the organizational level, the implementation of the reset agenda is progressing well. We are advancing reforms in the areas previously identified as requiring attention, with a particular focus on accountability, professionalism, ethical leadership, discipline and consequence management, and operational effectiveness. Our supply chain reforms are currently underway, with fleet management and infrastructure projects receiving priority attention. At station level, the modernization program is already being rolled out in provinces. These reforms are not an administrative exercise. They are an operational enabler. A police officer cannot be expected to deliver an effective service without vehicles, without proper infrastructure, without technology, without equipment or systems and leadership required to perform the job. We have also institutionalized accountability through our weekly management sessions, which are focused on the crime statistics minister. These sessions allow us to interrogate this data and to identify emerging trends. We challenge underperformance and we determine corrective action. The objective is not simply to explain the numbers after the fact, but to use these numbers to drive decisions before the next set of statistics is released. Where we see improvement, Minister, we must understand what worked and we need to sustain such. Where categories remain stubborn, we must change our approach. The increases in attempted murder, assault with intent to inflict grievous bodily harm, and common assault requires particular attention. Our analysis indicates that alcohol and drugs are among the contributing factors, while public areas and residences remain significant places of occurrence, particularly in relation to violent crimes, rape as well as murder. We are therefore strengthening interventions aimed at addressing these causative factors, Minister, working with communities, with relevant stakeholders, as well as to ensure that we prevent violence before it escalates into serious and fatal offenses. The integrated organized crime implementation plan has also moved from strategy into implementation. Its purpose is to identify, disrupt, and dismantle organized criminal syndicates and the networks that sustains them. We will continue to pursue not only the foot soldiers of organized crime, but also the organizers, the financiers, facilitators, and enablers who profit from criminality. The work of policing does not end with an arrest. During this period, over 2,900 persons were sentenced to imprisonment for serious offenses, including 153 life sentences. Among those sentenced to life imprisonment were 33 persons convicted of murder and 116 convicted for rape. These outcomes reinforce the importance of quality investigations, evidence gathering, and close cooperation between the South African Police Service, the National Prosecuting Authority, and the courts. Every conviction represents an additional measure of justice for victims and the removal of dangerous offenders from our communities. Ladies and gentlemen, during the same period, the criminal justice system continued to demonstrate a firm and uncompromising response to gender-based violence and femicide, with 648 perpetrators sentenced to imprisonment, including 98 sentenced to life imprisonment and 70 to 20 years or more. A further 169 received sentences of 10 to 19 years, while 311 were sentenced to between 1 and 9 years. These outcomes send a clear and an unequivocal message that GBVF perpetrators will be pursued, they will be prosecuted, and they will be held accountable with the full might of the law brought to bear against those who commit these devastating crimes. Operational interventions to address police killings are continuously reinforced at all levels. We continue to call on communities to recognize that the safety of police officers is inseparable from the safety of communities. Our members cannot protect society effectively if society does not also stand against attack on those who protect it. We urge communities to continue providing information and to also reject criminality, and we urge communities to support our officers. Our responsibility now is to convert these operational gains into sustained and measurable improvements in the crime picture. We are determined to reframe the reputation of the South African Police Service through improved, credible, and professional operational response, to restore public trust through accountability, integrity, and visible service delivery, and to strengthen community participation as a force multiplier in the fight against crime. Manifestation, accountability, and performance will therefore be intensified, particularly in problematic policing precincts. And in our response to the 17 community-reported serious crime categories, we are relentlessly focusing on the areas where communities experience the greatest harm. The station remains the front line of policing, and its performance must be measured by the safety outcomes experienced by the communities it serves. We have therefore recently appointed 4 provincial commissioners, and they have undergone an intense executive induction program. This program was the first program of its kind designed specifically for lieutenant generals in the history of the SAPS. This intervention is part of strengthening executive leadership, governance, and accountability across the provinces. We expect our provincial leaders to translate strategy into operational results and to ensure that every policing precinct is driven by discipline, professionalism, intelligence, and measurable performance. I want to take this opportunity, Minister, to encourage our men and women in blue across the country for their continued determination and solid focus in the fight against crime. The over 171,000 arrests, the thousands of firearms and rounds of ammunition removed from circulation, the recovery of stolen and hijacked vehicles, the disruptions of organized crime, the thousands of high-visibility operations, and the countless interventions that never makes the headlines are evidence that policing continues with determination. We recognize that our members are operating in an environment of competing demands and significant organizational and societal challenges. Yet, Minister, they continue to serve. We therefore call upon every police officer to remain disciplined, to remain courageous, to remain professional and operationally focused. Do not become complacent because crime has declined in certain categories, and do not become discouraged because some of the categories remain stubborn. We must remain firm and resilient in the fight against crime. The statistics tell us where we are. Our operational response will determine where we go next. We acknowledge that crime volumes remain unacceptably high. We acknowledge the gaps. We acknowledge the agency. But we also recognize the progress and the capacity within this organization do more. Our resolve is therefore unequivocal. We will intensify intelligence-led policing. We will continue to strengthen station accountability, disruption of organized crime, and the removal of illegal firearms and drugs from our communities. We will improve investigation, strengthen partnerships, and deploy our resources where they will have the greatest impact. We will not measure success merely by the number of arrests we make, but by the safer communities we build, the confidence we restore, and the lives we have protected. The South African Police Services therefore remains committed to this mission. We will continue to pursue criminals, dismantle criminal networks, and protect our communities, and uphold the Constitution and the rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Acting National Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to open it up for questions. My colleague and namesake, Kamogelo, has the roving mic. We will start with the questions on the floor before we proceed to the ones that have been sent through via WhatsApp. And just to mention, we are going to take the questions from the GCIS social media page as well as the SAPS groups. By a show of hands, I know 2 hands on the floor. Okay, there are quite a few. Okay, Kamo? No, we can't hear you. Not that audible.
No. Hello. Hi. My name is Nalini Mashichi. I'm a reporter from the Daily Maverick. I just have 2 quick questions. The first one is related to murder. Could someone provide an explanation for the declining rates? And the second is in relation to kidnapping. I know that kidnappings are down, but I wanted to find out if you have an idea of how many kidnappings are attributed to express kidnappings and what the main methodologies, what the main methods they're using are. Is it hijacking? Is it dating sites? How are they going about it?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Mabole from UFM. I had a similar question about kidnapping. In particular, I don't know how to explain this. Kidnapping of people who come from East Africa and Middle East. It's my observation that they seem to be snatched more, as well as South Africans of Indian origin. Is there any formal information that shows this to be the case? And if so, why are they being targeted? And just your reaction, Minister, to the amendments that are being pursued by Cabinet currently to finally criminalize illicit mining. I know that in the past you couldn't charge people for the actual crime. And still on illicit mining, what happens to the heavy machinery that you find when you pounce on these people operating? I've seen it's quite serious equipment, and for you to move it, what does the SAPS remove it? And if so, do you really have the resources to move such heavy equipment? I'm sure it would have some kind of a dent on your budget. Thank you.
Safety and how much they do not feel safe. And one of the issues that we've seen circulating on social media is the fact that women, well, not women only, but a lot of people feel that the tangible one, that is the emergency services of the SAPS, they do not get assistance. There's a recent investigation done by the DA where they did hoax calls, just trying to see really how effective is the line, and only 56 of those calls were answered. They did over 1,000 of those calls, and so essentially this is also what my question then would then be: is the SAPS aware of this, and what has been done?
Thank you very much. My name is Calvin Dudla. I work for SABC News. Just 2 questions to the Minister. Minister, mine would be based on the anti-gang unit all over the country. Do you think they're effective? Do you think they have enough resources to fight crime? We were with you at the Recha Park when 2 police officers and 2 civilians were killed. You were so livid about it. So what are you doing about it? And do you think they need more resources? If yes, when are they getting those resources? Number 2, my question is on the local government elections that are upcoming. I think this would be a good platform for you to put the country into confidence about the preparedness of the members of the South African Police Service. Councillors have been shot and killed left, right, and centre. The preparedness of the police, I know you might say a media briefing will come around October, but I think this would be a good time platform for you to explain to the nation on the preparedness of SAPS when it comes to the local government elections. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Francis Ramachari from Progressive Independent News Agency. There is one aspect of the crime stats that I did not hear, or I think was not highlighted. Can you please highlight or paint a picture on the cross-border crimes, such as the cross-border crimes, but then looking at the trafficking, human trafficking, looking at the illegal crossings, and also maybe and which areas were mostly affected in the cross-border crimes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Bafeli Gamarani from ESCA. Minister, I know you've touched on what's happening at the Matanga Commission, but we have seen it's revealing how deep corruption is within the South African Police Service. What assurance do you give South Africans that the figures being released to them are a true reflection of what's happening on the ground?
Just to go back to the question that was posed by Naledi, can I just confirm that you are asking with regards to kidnappings, what the popular methods, which popular methods are being used? I think our panel didn't quite catch that question. We'll start with the Minister responding to some of the questions, and thereafter we will see who else is going to respond.
Thank you, Carmo. So there were some specific questions. General Dimpane and her team will answer even when they've been addressed to me, because they will have more information. So the decision that Cabinet took recently to adopt legislation that criminalizes illicit mining. The legislation was presented by Minister Kubai, so it's her department. Of course, it would have been discussed in the criminal justice cluster. It's an extremely important legislative response to the problem of illegal mining. That was a gap in the law. It's now being addressed. I'm anxious for that legislation, passage of that legislation to be expedited through Parliament. I hope that it's not unduly delayed in the parliamentary process, because this will the passage of this legislation, this particular enactment of illicit mining as a criminal offence, as a specific criminal offence, will assist the police to be more effective. At the moment, we cannot arrest people for illegal mining. So you have to find some other ancillary or collateral crime to affect arrests. So this is an important piece of legislative reform. The issue around 10.111 is an important question. I'm aware of the DA audit. We have been dealing with that matter. General Dipane will address that issue. Now, on the issues of the anti-gang unit and organized crime, General Mkonazi is here. I'm going to ask him to address some specific issues if he feels he needs to. So, what has been our approach to organized crime? We had to strengthen the leadership in SAPS to focus around organized crime. General Mkonazi has been appointed to chair the Priorities Committee. This was step number one, to deal with the issue of leadership. I will shortly be clarifying the issue around the appointment of an appointment to head the DPCI. The DPCI is the main policing structure where we're developing capabilities to strengthen our response to organized crime. I'll be making an announcement on that in the next month or so, I believe. Third, the strengthening of the anti-gang units. That is part of the strategy. Fourthly, the allocation of CARA funds. It's not new, I made the announcement some time ago, of more than R1 billion. Those funds are currently being utilized to strengthen our fight against organized crime. And you've seen how recently, in response to events in Recha Park, also in response to events in Knysna, how quickly the police were able to identify suspects, collect the necessary evidence, so it speaks to stronger investigations, the ability to effect arrests, and to be confident that those arrests will result in prosecutions. I am planning to set up, just waiting for the funding to come through, an observatory at national level, which will rely on open source information, the analysis of that information on organized crime, on the cartels. So I believe that in the next month or so, apart from what crime intelligence does, those are covert operations, but the ministry will have available to it good information on the cartels operating in Westbury, for instance, or in any other area. How they financed, who their leadership structures are, and I believe that that's going to strengthen monitor police action. So, and then of course we took the decision to deploy the SANDF, and we made it very clear from the very beginning, their role was to support the police action, not to substitute police action, and that it is not a long-term intervention or solution. Okay? And I hear a lot of parliamentarians asking questions about Operation Prosper based on the assumption that, on wrong assumptions about what the purpose is, what role in our thinking and approach the SANDF deployment plays in the fight against the gangs and so forth. And you've heard from the presentation today that, in fact, I am satisfied. There are weaknesses, yes, but I am satisfied that the deployment of the South African police force by the President was the right decision in the circumstances. It has strengthened our ability to stabilize the position, to put the gangs on the defensive, but in an environment where the gangs are fighting each other, the killings have continued. So our work is cut out for ourselves. We're not at the end of this matter. So my response to the question about gang violence is to reflect on the steps that have been taken. We have a responsible government. We are acting to try and bring the gang violence under control, and these are the steps that we've taken. I've also made the point also in my opening remarks, because I think there are some framings of the gang violence issue which are wrong. They're wrong in the sense that they create the impression that the problem of gang violence is a recent phenomenon, that SAPS is not succeeding. The gangs are over 100 years old, particularly in the Western Cape. They have deep roots. And long term, we have to address the development challenges of those communities. If young people don't have hope and opportunity, they will be recruited by the gangs. If we don't create alternative avenues for economic activity, the gangs will fill the gap. Talk to people in those communities. I think even those who are victims of the gang violence understand that the gangs in Rega Park, they provide food parcels to families that are hungry. They've been providing, in effect, employment. So I think that the national discussion about dealing with gang violence must change. It must hold the police accountable. It must hold me accountable for what I do as the minister. But I think we must also have a deep and honest conversation about what the root causes are of the gang violence and what is needed to address, to long-term, to change in reality what the people in Mfuleni and Nyanga and Mitchell's Plain and Rega Park are actually experiencing. Give people hope and a chance, build an inclusive economy. That is what is going to change the picture. Now, the issues around election preparation, these are important questions. So in Cabinet, there is an IMC, an interministerial committee, focused on election preparation. It's chaired by Minister Tlabisa. That IMC also reports to the Cabinet, and I reckon in the last month we've received 2 presentations from the IEC on election preparation. So that's the first question. Is the IEC prepared to manage and run the election? As I say, this is a matter that is receiving the constant, continuous attention of Cabinet. The report itself is presented to Cabinet by the IEC officials, the chairperson and the CEO. I have to say, I think, although we had problems from time to time in the last election, the IEC is one of the great achievements of our young democracy. We have professional people there, committed people with strong capabilities. I think they will do even better in the coming election from the presentation that we've received. The second part is what SAPS does to secure the elections. Now, I want to say, look at what the South African Police Service has been able to achieve in managing large events, whether it's the SADC event or the ability of the South African Police Service, or what happened on June the 30th. This tells you that we are dealing with a functioning organization that has the ability to secure an area, to secure an event, and to make sure that it is able to secure an election. It is able to secure an important event that's important for the way the country projects itself internally and externally. So I would say, from the presentation that I've received, I think issues around election preparation, including the security of the election, are receiving continuous, high-level, responsible attention by the government as a whole. And the police service, General Musigiri sits in the net joints, which deals with these matters. At the appropriate time, there will be engagement publicly on the level of police preparation. But from where I'm standing, I have a lot of confidence in their ability. I know what they're doing. I understand the level of preparation. I don't think I have any concerns. The public shouldn't have any concerns about the fact, our ability to ensure that we will have a peaceful and fair election, local government election at the end of the year. Now, the Madlanga Commission, finally. The Madlanga Commission, what is under consideration of the Madlanga Commission and what we've presented should also be separated out. What we're presenting here today are the statistical patterns of crime in the country for the last quarter, and also the police action that has been taken at station level and operationally through Operation Chanel and so forth over the last quarter. And you can assess that, whether how well we're doing, and how not well. Okay. What is under consideration in the Madlanga Commission shows the extent to which not only the police service, but the criminal justice system requires a reset, structural and systemic reform, which inherently is a long-term matter. The medium to long-term matter, the National Commissioner General Dimpane did speak to these questions about professionalism, the rule of law, integrity of leadership, reform of the supply chain system within SAPS, strengthening criminal intelligence, dealing with infrastructure more effectively, modernizing service delivery at station level, and so forth. Those are questions that are already receiving attention, and I would say when the Madlanga Commission reports at the end of the year, it's going to give the reform agenda, the reset agenda, real impetus, because the public will now understand the recommendations following, an in-depth process of inquiry that the Commission is following, will understand exactly what needs to be done. But in the department, we're not waiting for 6 months we know that supply chain needs attention, and the National Commissioner Dimpane has already taken reform steps. I will be setting up a panel, a governance panel, in the next month or so. The terms of reference of that panel, it's a precursor to the board of inquiry, the board that will be established once the SAPS Act has been passed, is to advise on the reset agenda. So I don't think these two matters should be conflated, and I've said from the very beginning, the President was right to support to appoint the Madlanga Commission. He was criticized at the time, if you recall, and I said from the very beginning this was the right step. The public will come to understand in time how important a step it has been, and now nobody disputes that. But what is under consideration in the Madlanga Commission doesn't tell the whole story about police capabilities and about what is going on in the police service. So the two shouldn't be conflated. It is my honest assessment of the police service, because I have now served in this capacity for a year, that we have a police service in this country. We have 180,000 police officers who are doing their work. We have police stations across the country. In many cases, they're not properly maintained. In some cases, they are now not able to provide comprehensive services to communities as they've expanded. There are many communities that need police stations that don't have policing infrastructure, and we need to pay attention to those matters. But the distinction that has to be drawn is where Madlanga, and there have been 2 reports now, has made findings and recommendations on disciplinary action. We have taken that disciplinary action. The President, after the first report, spoke with me. We agreed to set up in SAPS a team of investigators specifically mandated with the responsibility to deal with such findings, as opposed to reform findings, structural findings. Reform findings that say you have to take disciplinary action or you have to take further criminal action. In all of those cases, that's exactly what we've done. Disciplinary action has been taken. I think the National Commissioner has been firm and bold in taking action. And that started, by the way, with General Masemola. When that investigation team was put in place, General Masemola was still the National Commissioner. So he was also committed to implementing the outcomes of the Madlanga Commission on, if you like, consequence management and criminal investigation. Secondly, I know I'm being a bit repetitive, we are waiting for the Madlanga Commission to report finally on what reform agenda it's going to be proposing, but we're not waiting for the Madlanga Commission to start implementing reforms that we believe are necessary, arising inter alia out of what is being demonstrated before our people, before the Madlanga Commission, and so we are already acting. That's what we mean by the reset agenda.
Thank you, Minister. Acting National Commissioner.
Thank you, Program Director. There was a question, if I heard it correctly, was what is contributing to the decline in the murder rate? Of course, we are happy with the decline in murder rate, but we can never be happy when over 5,000 people were killed in 90 days. Of course, we could attribute this decline to our intensified operations, intelligence operations, and the confiscation of firearms. There's one slide when General Skukuni was presenting where we showed the weapon of choice. What is these weapons that are being utilized to commit this murder? And when you look at that, you find that firearms are the weapon of choice. So our interventions are focused on removing these firearms from society because they are the ones that are causing problems for us. And we are continuing to analyze and to ensure that we strengthen our murder and robbery units as well as interventions in provinces in this particular regard. We also looked at alcohol and its impact in terms of issues surrounding contact crimes, which sometimes results in terms of murder. For Q1, we were troubled by multiple murders. There's a slide that showed 13 people murdered in relation to issues of illegal mining, tavern shootings, and so forth and so on. So while we note and welcome the decline, the work still needs to continue. We need to strengthen our resolve and our initiatives to ensure that we maintain and sustain that is working and strengthen our efforts in this particular regard. There was a question as well in terms of heavy machinery that we normally remove or confiscate during our illegal mining operations. Do we have resources? The answer is yes, we do have the resources and the ability. We confiscate these machineries and we process them accordingly in line with the exhibit management protocols. The issue of 10-111s and calls that goes unanswered, it's an issue that can never be acceptable. We spoke about professionalism. Professionalism is not only related to senior managers. Professionalism is related to every single police officer, be it at the CSC, be it at the 10-111 center. That is why immediately we picked up that particular situation. We instructed for an investigation with the intention to hold those that would have been responsible accountable in this regard. And we welcome the scrutiny from all sectors of community. Where we lag behind or where we conduct ourselves in a manner that is unacceptable, action will be taken. You would have noted, media, that we have since started to deal with these gaps that have been put before us. Of course, there are gaps, and we have to admit that there are gaps so that then we can be able to improve. We are on a process of updating contact details of all police stations across the country on all platforms, be it on my SAPS app, on the website. Those are the gaps that we are currently and urgently dealing with to ensure that communities can access our services in this regard. Where we find out that our members were complacent in terms of unprofessional behavior and not answering calls, steps will be taken where investigations would have revealed inefficiencies in this particular regard. So we welcome scrutiny, we welcome where communities give us information. It assists us to improve our services in this regard. Our AGUs are the resourced. Minister touched on this. Yes, indeed, this is an area of priority in terms of allocation of resources and budgets. This is on our priority list for the 26-27 financial year. Maybe just to add in terms of the elections, yes, the minister has spoken. We are ready and we will deliver a safe and secure LGEs. All our structures have been activated in this regard. The issue of kidnappings and other operational questions, General Msikidi and General Simtumule will touch on that. Thank you, Kap.
Thank you, General. General Msikidi.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Greetings to the Minister, and protocol is observed. Perhaps just to give context on what Minister and I think the Acting National Commissioner have alluded to in terms of the plans for LGE, in terms of what are we doing to respond to the political killings. I think this has been topical with all the plannings and briefings that we are having. We shall recall that even today's presentation by the Acting National Commissioner was to emphasize on the issues of strengthening the capacity within the organization, and PKTT is one of those that has been expanded to other areas of operation, particularly where we're looking at areas of vulnerability or hotspots areas. We know our 4 provinces, and Gauteng is currently having that active team that is working the PKTT and other parts of the country, such as Eastern Cape. The other area that we're looking at within that space, I think as we are speaking, Minister, the IMC is sitting to take the month presentation in this regard. It's to look at the mitigating factors that includes the intelligence collection and analysis, particularly around this vulnerable sector of political leadership. And the councillors are those that are high on the list, and we have worked together with relevant department of COCTA at national level, SALGA and so on and so forth, to look at other mitigating issues in terms of intelligence collection and speedily to highlight areas of vulnerability so that we can conduct the risk assessments of the councillors and put measures in place, including how the security should be done, because in some instances there was a vulnerability that was also identified where security detail will be withdrawn and we will be left with issues. The investigation in this regard, as I've already alluded, and how we speedily and quickly react. On the issues of the cross-border, I think DPCI is the custodian of the human trafficking cases. General Nkosi will talk to that. But in terms of the border and border policing, in terms of the hotspots areas that have been identified, land ports in terms of trafficking have been identified as one of those challenging one. We do not have that much. I think with the system that has been launched in few days ago at OR Tambo, it will assist a great deal in mitigating this particular vulnerability, including how we expand to others in that collective of all the departments, law enforcement departments that are working on the borders and cross-border. Then we have identified Ortia to some extent, hence the launch was done at Ortia of that device that will do the detection, those that will work with those that are in transit and those that are coming in, to see how we cap that better. Then on the integrated approach, at our land ports, we have rolled out together with BMA and other departments, but the hotspots borders so far remains Libombo and Beitbridge in this regard, notwithstanding other borders, because we are looking at vulnerabilities at all other land and airports, as well as other forms of the ports. Lastly, from my side, I think the Acting National Commissioner also touched on the issues, but I think the question was very specific on the issues of the heavy machinery and whether the budget is sufficient to do so. We partner all the time. We make sure that we do have relevant partners that will work with us in assisting us in removing heavy machinery and the storage thereof. There are those that have been identified, and the question that will follow that came previously is that this yellow fleet, as we'll refer to, will then be taken by those partners that are working with law enforcement that are rivalries to those that we are taking. If the equipment is confiscated, it cannot be used by anyone. So I want to reiterate and confirm that it is not correct, it is not true. They are not going to be used until the proper disposal of those in terms of exhibit management happens. So we're trying to augment and supplement the SAPS movement of this yellow fleet together with our partners where we fell short. During Operation Valumkoti, we have set aside, the National Commissioner set aside a particular budget out of that, and we requested the deviation from the initial so that we can be able to transport and move those yellow fleet. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. We'll now have General Sintimule, and she will be followed by Lieutenant General Nkosi.
Thank you very much, Kamokhelo, and greetings to the Minister, members of the media, and all my colleagues on the platform. I'm going to limit my response to the issues of kidnappings. I wish to put forward that the disproportionate exposure of certain nationalities to high ransom kidnappings cases in South Africa is not necessarily limited or actually based on ethnicity, but rather on your business model that certain communities would use to conduct their business. And I think in this regard, you'll find that some of these businesses actually are run on your cash-heavy model, particularly your wholesale and retail, etc., but also the Hawala system, which is an informal money transfer networks, also exposes them to being targeted by criminal syndicates. We also have noted the increase in your cross-border criminal syndicate targeting these nationalities. And in this regard, we are working with our counterparts in the region, particularly through our trilateral planning cell, where we are joint targeting and investigating these syndicates with the intent to neutralize them. We also have a very focused response where we are employing multidimensional anti-kidnapping teams, and these are spread across the country. These are also working together with the affected communities as well as families who also are very instrumental in either us recovering the kidnapped victims, but also where possible we utilize the issue of facilitating of your your kidnapping or your ransom payment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Greetings to the Minister and the Acting National Commissioner. All protocol is observed. The question, the way I captured it here, had to deal with cross-border crimes, and in particular human trafficking and forceful, I think, crossing of borders, but I noted it as immigration-related offenses. Basically, but the question was to say we are requested to have these type of crimes made visible in the crime stats. And I think, obviously, moving forward, a room can be considered for that, and I will leave it to the Office of the National Commissioner and Minister to decide on that. Briefly from my side on the aspect of human trafficking and border-related crimes or cross-border, we normally call them transnational crimes. These are crimes that a similar one would obviously be cybercrime, since we normally coin it as a borderless offense, including this human trafficking. All I can explain quickly, I won't have the exact statistical figures of these crimes, but to indicate that in addressing these crimes, we cooperate heavily, in particular with specific local departments here, which is your DNH, Department of Home Affairs, let me put it that way, SARS, Border Management Authority. So with external law enforcement agencies through Interpol and the intensifying of intelligence collection. So these are ways and means that are available in addressing this particular sketch of crimes. But we will in any way continue our cooperation with non-governmental organizations and international organizations that focuses on human trafficking and the issues of crimes related or affecting other countries. Successes to note one or two. You will recall in a month or so, we managed through a collaborative operation in the North Bay Bridge, where we seized explosives, and meticulous investigations were conducted, resulting in the individual being sentenced to 10 imprisonment, which was just a significance of showing that if there is intelligence in place, there is cooperation within the government departments, there is cooperation with external role players through Interpol, we can be able to address some serious crimes like those mentioned of the explosives, which also indirectly also resolves cash CITs. It also resolves illegal mining, because or any other crime where the explosives could have been utilized. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General. Ladies and gentlemen, I am mindful of the time. At this moment, we are going to take the questions on the online platforms. I'll just ask my colleague Vanessa from GCIS to read the first sets. Thereafter, Brigadier Mate will read questions from the SAPS groups. Now, lady, I note your hand, but I'm pretending like I don't see you. Vanessa? Which one? Okay, we'll come back to it. Express kidnappings. Okay, I'll come to you. Vanessa?
Paul Fishiatu from Bloomberg. While there has been a welcome reduction in the murder rate, the attempted murder rate has risen sharply. Usually, these two categories track each other. Could the Commissioner please explain that? Demoso Mokwena from Now in SA. Tourism figures are down 2.8% between the months May and June. This can be directly linked to the violence we saw from vigilante groups March and March and Action SA. This is a good case for economic sabotage. President Cyril Ramaphosa said the instigators are under investigation. How far along are these investigations? Will the SAPS be issuing warrants to seize devices as seen in the Makanga Commission for forensic analysis to weed out the funders of these vigilante groups and all their co-conspirators who instigated in real life as well as online the spread of fake news that fueled this Afrophobia? Operation Tudula members have been assaulting and hounding Chidima and those around the outside of the courts. Why is the SAPS not arresting these vigilantes, especially in a province where people have been murdered outside and inside its courts? Can we be assured that the SAPS will deal heavily with these vigilantes? That's from GCI's platforms.
Brigadier Mate.
I think most of the questions have been covered by the responses from the leadership, because they mainly have to do with gang violence as well as resources. But there is one on, is there a plan to combat extortion on the Cape Flats, from Andile Mbanja from the SABC. And I think the minister has covered this one. What is SAPS doing to stop gang violence in communities where gangs have taken control? How will you protect officers from being targeted and killed while fighting gang violence? Is there any specific plans in place? From the second group, SAPS group, what is the minister's comment on the revelations about IDAC emerging from the Makanga Commission? What's the status, as far as you know, around the charges relating to suspended National Police Commissioner General Fanima Samola? That's from Yusuf Abranji. And then from Media Corp to Lieutenant General Bulin Dimbane, there are concerns about the large number of senior managers, particularly Lieutenant Generals, who remain on suspension despite these matters being processed expeditiously. Instead, the service requests extensions to finalize them. What is the cause of this delay? Is the delay primarily a question of capacity, or does the service struggle to finalize departmental proceedings against senior managers with the same speed applied to junior members? And then, okay, I think this one has been covered. I think we are covered. Thank you.
Minister, can we start with you?
Thank you, Karma. Again, the police leadership, and you can see that what's being projected here is a collective leadership. There is a leadership in SAPS at national level, and we're trying to make sure that that collective with different and combined skills, takes responsibility, and that's also what we're trying to communicate through the way we've set up this process. Now, there were a lot of questions asked about vigilante groups. The message from the ministry to the SAPS leadership and from the SAPS leadership to the police has been, we've done quite well, I believe, in dealing with the public order issues. But there have been a lot of criminal acts conducted sporadically on a quite a decentralized basis sometimes, which the President has been very clear also about this matter, where we're expecting that accountability. I think these are more difficult situations for the police, especially, for instance, where such acts occur in volatile situations, and the overall responsibility of the police is to keep the peace, avoid violence, and so forth. But this is an area that needs attention. People who are conducting criminal acts, going into businesses, for instance, and demanding, demanding, in effect, taking over policing functions, law enforcement functions, or the functions of the public service, demanding information about whether the employees, for instance, are in the country legally or not. That's the responsibility of the Labour Department. So I want to emphasize again that we uphold the constitutional right to assemble and to protest peacefully and unarmed. Second, that all unlawful action is unacceptable, and that the police are required to investigate and prosecute, or ensure that those people are prosecuted. There have been a number of arrests, but I think there is also a perception that many people have escaped accountability when they shouldn't. And maybe the National Commissioner might want to speak in a little bit more detail. You can imagine it's a much more difficult situation for the police. There have been very few prosecutions of online hate crimes, for instance, or misinformation. It may be also that our law needs attention in this regard. And it strains police resources, but it's certainly an area that needs attention. A lot of governments across the continent have been raising this matter with us. The Human Rights Commission has written to me. I will be engaging with the Human Rights Commission on the issues that they've raised. And there are multilateral international bodies that are also conducting investigations. And we're going to have to account for the action that has been taken or not taken to deal with vigilante violence. And so I think that we, as a country, as we have a conversation about the terms upon which foreign nationals can enter our country, as we're having that conversation, and it's an important conversation. It's a long overdue conversation. It's a conversation also that we're having with the leaders of our countries, particularly on our borders. We have to have that conversation. And we are taking steps to strengthen the law enforcement. We're taking steps to strengthen the infrastructure on the borders. We're going to do that. We must do that. It's in the interests of our people. This is a sovereign country, and so forth. But at the same time, we have to have a conversation about how that's done. We want to deal with this matter without losing our identity as South Africans. We want to be able to do this without creating long-term damage to our relationships on the continent. Surely that's very important. It's also important to the economic well-being of our people. If you approach this from an economic point of view, then all of us have to be prepared to subject our conduct to scrutiny. If we conduct ourselves in a way which damages the country's potential to grow the tourism sector. Recently in Cabinet we had a presentation on this matter, is clearly one of the areas, if we are going to grow this economy from the 1% now to at least 3% and above, tourism is one of the key sectors. So how we conduct ourselves as South Africans in our own interest is very important. And we must introduce that conversation into the conversation we as South Africans are having about illegal immigration. So we have to deal with illegal immigration, but how we do it is very important. It affects our diplomatic position. It can affect negatively our economic prospects. And I do not think that that it is, we have to include the issues around the issues that I'm now talking about, and others have talked about. How we treat others is an important matter who are not South Africans. It's an important issue. How are we going to grow this economy? How are we going to build relationships on our continent? It matters how we are perceived. How people in Botswana perceive us is very important. How people in Zimbabwe perceive South Africans, very important. Because when we build relationships, we build the future. And yes, I think the questions that have been raised about tourism should be an important part of the conversation about immigration. The issues around IDEC, I have spoken about this matter recently, so I'm not quite sure why it's being asked again. And Yusuf will know, IDEC is an independent investigative body. IDEC sits in the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Ordinarily speaking, as a minister, I have to respect the independence of institutions. That's one of the issues under scrutiny in Madlanga, where ministers overreach. It's not my job to comment on the work of IDEC, for the reason I'm indicating. It sits in another department, and it's constitutionally independent. And why is it independent? It's independent because we have to set up our anti-corruption institutions and insulate them from improper political interference. So, if I do not comment on a regular basis on what IDEC does or is not doing, no inference can be drawn from that. But evidence has been laid before the Madlanga Commission, compelling evidence. I've watched some of it. I don't have the time to watch the Madlanga Commission all the time, but I've watched some of it. And I have said recently when I went on the weekend to express my condolences once again to the Babita Deokaran's family, and to make the point that justice there has not yet been done, I made the point that I think it is now overwhelmingly clear that there have been people in important positions in IDEC who have acted. It would appear to me, it looks, as I said in those observations, it looks. I'm not sure if the people who are appointed have the competence to be appointed in those positions. And it does look to me like they were not acting in good faith. They were not always acting in the public interest. Were they pursuing other agendas? Some of them. And I will wait once again for the Madlanga Commission to come to conclusions. But the impact of those decisions on the police has been significant. General Khumalo and certain other people were indeed arrested at the airport. They were arrested. And those cases, those charges have been withdrawn. And they've been withdrawn. The head of the DPP reviewed the decisions of IDEC. That's when I said, now I can now speak. Reviewed the IDEC, of the decisions of IDEC, and came to the conclusion that those charges were without foundation. And I do think that incalculable damage has been done to the fight against corruption, because IDEC was also established to strengthen the fight against corruption. And so I am angry about that. I said I'm livid. And now we're going to have to rebuild IDEC. And once we start that process, it's not for the Minister of Police to comment on what IDEC is doing, because we've learned that that's not what a Minister of the Police should be doing. But in this case, I thought I had to speak out. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We'll have the Acting National Commissioner respond, followed by General Masikidi, and lastly, we'll have General Mkwanazi. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. I will respond on the first question on the issue of attempted murder rate that is showing an upward trend. I think there are somewhere on the slides where we have demonstrated that the drivers behind this increase is the issue of alcohol as well as drug-related issues. On that particular slide, 620 cases were as a result of alcohol use or alcohol abuse. This then tells us that between April and June, we had issues within liquor outlets, taverns, shebeens, pubs, and bars where people were fighting, arguing, and attempting to murder each other. And this is a category that we don't want to see this increase or this upward trend, because it tends to generate itself in terms of murder if those victims never get a chance to recover. So there is a problem of alcohol abuse in this country. We need to ensure that we strengthen our efforts in terms of compliance interventions, in terms of issues of closure, and compliance to the relevant regulations and other processes in place. But abuse and use of alcohol is a problem. This requires the whole of society that we have a conversation in terms of this, the whole of government approach, because if we are not going to be able to deal with this, allow our young people to engage themselves in issues of alcohol and subsequently arguing and fighting and attempting to murder each other, we have a problem as a society. So this is an area that is very problematic in this regard. We do have 5,136 cases of assault GBH that are associated with the use of alcohol, and that is unacceptable. So I wanted to just clarify in terms of what are the drivers in terms of this upward trend that we are seeing on attempted murder. There's a question which talks about, it came from the SAPS groups, the extensions, the delays in terms of disciplinary actions, in particular that are related to senior managers. I just want to respond by saying that indeed these delays are some things that we are worried about, but it has everything to do with the complexity of cases. Our regulations in terms of discipline allows us a specific timelines to ensure that we finalize internal disciplinary investigations. However, it also then says where practically possible. It is in our interest to ensure that when an internal investigation or disciplinary investigation is finalized, there are no gaps, that investigation has been dealt with thoroughly, and it is a case that will be able to stand the test of time. We are intending, or we have efforts to ensure that we finalize these cases both in the interest of the service as well as in the interest of the members who are involved in this regard. So we are almost done, and these are cases that requires us to then probe them thoroughly and ensure that then they are concluded successfully in this regard. The issues of investigations in terms of instigators during the protests, General Nkosi and General Musikidi will touch on that. However, there were teams and there are teams that have been put in place between CI and DPCI, and investigations are ongoing. Of course, when those investigations are concluded and they are ready for prosecution, that progress will be reported. Thank you, Program Director.
I was tempted to say I am sufficiently covered, that there is a working group that is working on all cases. So far, Minister, we will present to the IMC on migration on the number of cases. I think out of 253, we still have 107 cases that are court going. And in one of these cases that I'm referring to is where the high flyers, in as far as the March and other vigilante groups were concerned. General Nkosi, FIC, SARS, CI, and others are working on those other cases that are looking at the instigators. I think colleagues will also agree with me that when you get to this kind of cases, you don't want to go to court for the sake of arresting and going to court. You need to have a watertight case. Hence, it's looking at all angles, including the cybercrime. Why we have that specific team that the Acting National Commissioner also highlighted on the crime intelligence is specifically on cybercrime, that we are also assisted by our communication teams that is monitoring cybercrime. So we are monitoring certain individuals on a daily basis. Their accounts are being monitored. When correct information and enough or sufficient information have been collected to go to court, I think we will then talk to that issue. It's just we need to make a proper collection. I don't know if we have a scientific assessment or analysis that will indicate, as it was put, I think it's Temuso Mokwena, that the decline in tourism stats in May and June is as a result of March, because operations have been in. We did receive positive feedbacks in so far as the policing of these marches are concerned, and we are continuously doing so. And just to emphasize that when we do this operation, they become a multifaceted. We look at all other areas and other departments in this regard, and the Department of Tourism will have to statistically indicate if when they compare the numbers with previous years. Normally when we look at this particular statistics, you look at the past previous year and the now, and you will also take a sample of, at least in the South African Police Service, I know we'll look at the 4-year trend, and then we can indicate, yes, there were fears that were made to our communities in regard to the issues of the marches, but the constant communication, we also tried to give assurance and to give the comfort to our communities and our visitors that will be looked at. And statistics that we have in terms of the movement control registers will prove otherwise. So I do not want to say that Mukwena or Memukwena statistics that tourism have declined because of this is correct or not correct, and it will not be looked at as the police only matter, because it is a collaboration. We work with other departments as well to make sure that other areas are not affected in this regard. I think when we look at the State Minister of the Land Ports, we had African migrants coming more than those that left the country. And that is because there are records that have proved that migrants came into the country more than those that voluntarily left, that were leaving the country because of their time that has lapsed, and those that were fearing. Those coming in were more than those numbers. Thank you very much.
I know General Mkhwanazi was dreading to come speak, but General, can you please come to speak, and thereafter we'll close our program.
Thank you so much, and greetings to the Minister and the senior leadership. Minister has been seated for 3 hours, so I think this might need to be coming to an end now, this briefing. So in short, from me, I think what we just need to answer is about the work that we are doing on organized crime. The acting minister has already spoken a lot about it. There's nothing much to repeat on. Perhaps what I can add is the issue of the anti-gang unit. There's a specific budget allocated this year, over 70 million rand, that has been allocated by the Acting National Commissioner to make sure that we capacitate anti-gang unit. But there's also other resources that are coming from the CARA Fund that we are going to be deploying to support them. So we hope with the coordination of the work that they do, together with the anti-organized crime strategy that we are implementing, we are going to have successful operations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, General. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our session. Thank you very much for your attendance and participation. The media briefing is closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm fine. Good. Yeah,